Hey, what is going on, guys? Today we're going to start work on a painting project. I know it's been a long time, but we're going to work on painting the HG Gundam Livelance Heaven here. As you know, we currently have the Gundam Battlelog contest ongoing, and it's going to be wrapping up very soon. And obviously, I'm not making a contest entry to enter into my own contest, but I just thought I would give the contest a try as well, just painting up this kit. Now, with my current setup now, don't have a airbrush that I can use, so I am just going to be hand painting this kit, and I'm going to be painting it in some low visibility type colors, so we'll go over all the colors and everything in a bit first, and customization to the weapon. But I first just want to focus on the main kit itself. A couple things we need to do before we get it painted, and number one is just removing all the stickers, and then we do have a couple of seam lines we need to remove as well. Now ideally, if you knew that you wanted to paint a kit, you would just not put the stickers on in the first place, but if you did put the stickers on first and then you wanted to go back and paint, obviously when you remove them, you're going to have a little bit of sticky residue there left over. Now, there's a number of different products that you could use for this. A lot of time I just end up using lighter fluid because it's what I have on hand, because it's what I use for cleaning up panel lining. But if you just take your cotton swab or Q-tip or whatever and just put a little bit of lighter fluid on it, you could also use something like Goo Gone or a number of different just cleaning products that will just help to, anything that's meant to just clean sticker, like sticky residue like that, should work to just get rid of that just fine. Now as for our seam lines, we've got this one right here on the top of the shoulder, which is a very commonplace for a seam line on an HG kit. Fortunately for us, in this case, it's going to be one that's very easy to remove, so we can just take out these pieces here. And if all that's sandwiched between the parts is just a poly cap, then that's perfect. You don't have to worry about anything. It won't bother your painting at all. This is something that's normally done for parts when you want to be able to put the piece together and take it apart again easily, where you'll cut these tabs, these pegs here at a 45-degree angle. That makes the parts easier to put together and take apart. But I also find when removing seam lines, it also just helps. If you cut off a little bit of the peg, it just makes sure that there's going to be nothing interfering for the parts to be as tightly fitting as possible. So I'll normally just do this even when I'm just removing seam lines. And then on the opposite side, the flat side, I'll sand that a little bit. Now ideally you would want to sand both sides just a little bit, just to make sure that you have really good glue adhesion, but with the pegs right next to the edge like that, sometimes it's kind of hard to sand along that edge. So if you can sand at least one side, that's better than nothing. Now I have these, which are new out from Bandai. As you guys may well know if you watch any of my past videos, I really love the soft type sanding sticks from Wave, and now Bandai is making basically the exact same thing. So these are soft type sanding sticks from Bandai. There's a 400 grit, 600 grit, and 1000 grit here included in this pack, which is nice. So then you have just kind of a little bit of everything you need. 400 grit for the really rough stuff, 600 grit, which is kind of in between, which is what I generally use the most of, which is kind of very the most useful. And you can see they're color coded as well, so that makes it easy for you. Red, then blue, then the 1000 grit would be just like a finishing stick. So this is just good for just kind of getting a little bit of that smoothness back if you find the 400 or 600 grit left it a little bit too rough for you. And for just sanding the edge of this a little bit, I can just use the 1000 will be enough. Like I said, you really don't want to sand it all that much, but just a little bit, just to make sure that your glue is something that it can really bite onto. Now normally for this, I would typically use just Tamiya extra thin cement for removing seam lines, but you guys may not be familiar with this product. If you are, then great, but if not, this is Mr. Cement SPB. The B stands for black because the glue is black, so especially if you're working on a white kit like this and you're planning on painting it, so the color doesn't matter to you. Using a black cement might be easier because then it's easier to see, of course, whereas just the regular thin cement is just plain clear. The other nice thing about the SP is that it's meant to cure a little bit faster. I'm not really sure how much faster it does. It does seem to cure a little bit faster than the regular one. But either way, it is a good idea to give it plenty of time to cure as much as possible before you start sanding that. So I usually just leave the parts overnight, even though it's probably excessive after maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, probably enough, but just leave it till the next day just to be sure. Now our other Seamoth on this kit unfortunately is going to be a little bit more tricky depending on how you're planning on painting it. So it goes all the way down the back of the leg right there, and then there's on the front there's a panel line right there, but up under the knee can see a little bit of the seam right there as well. So here it is disassembled for you guys to see. So that's going to be our main problem. Now this serves as two problems actually. One is that there's this crossing detail that goes over the cross of that, so once you have this glued together, it's not as easy as just sanding that down, because you have this recessed detail that then you need to, you're going to need to like carve the glue out of there. Now ideally doing something like that with a chisel would be the right way to go. I don't have a chisel on hand, so I'm just going to have to do it, I think, just by a hobby knife, and I'm going to do my best with that. We'll see how that goes. The other problem is that the knee joint will be locked in here if you don't modify it. So if you're airbrushing or using spray cans or something and you wanted to paint this knee joint a separate color from the main armor, and you want it to be a separate piece, then once this seam line is all glued up, there's no way to get this knee armor back in there without modifying it. Now the most easy modification you could do is just cut those pegs off, and then it would just slot right down into place, but then there's nothing holding it there. You would have to glue it, and then that would limit your articulation a little bit, because this is a sliding joint in there. These pegs fit into this track right there and allow that to slide as part of your knee articulation. So you would lose that if you do wanted to just go the most easy route of just cutting that off and then just slotting this in and gluing it there. So that's why I'm saying it really depends on what you want to do with the kit. For me, in my case, I'm planning on hand painting it, so I can just hand paint this fine with that knee just locked in there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of the seam and just leave this all together like that, because then I can just paint this in a different color and paint that in a different color by hand, easy enough. If I was airbrushing the kit, I would just cut the pegs there and then just glue this into place, because normally when I paint my kits, they're meant to be just fixed pose anyway, so I'm not really worried about the articulation of it. So for me, for now, I can just go ahead and just glue this like it is like that. Now, if you are planning on just locking the joint in there, you are going to want to be careful of not getting glue into that joint so that it would lock the joint where you don't want it to be, for example, in just like the wrong position for whatever reason. So once you press that together and the glue is starting to do its thing, make sure you move the joint a little bit, make sure that that's not getting stuck by the glue where you don't want it to be. Now while that glue is drying and we're waiting to work on those seams, we can just do a couple other little modifications to this that I have planned. So number one, these little circle bits here on the sides and the front of the foot, I want to just go ahead and drill those out so they're a little bit more defined. Like this little bit here, this one on the front is not too bad, but the ones on the side of the foot, the detail is like really shallow, and so it ends up just kind of looking like nothing basically, just right here. So that's why I want to just drill out to make it look a little bit nicer. So here we go. In comparison, here is how that's going to look. So that looks much nicer, like they're actually meant to be like little thrusters sort of. Anyway, another thing here on the backpack, which very sloppily pin aligned, has these like blade parts bits here, which just aren't really going to fit with the design. I don't really care for them, it's just kind of silly looking. So just really easily gonna lop those off and sand that down, just getting rid of this little part of the design here. There we go. That's cut and filed down, so that those will just be smooth over the top of there like that. Now there is mold lines along here, and as you can maybe see right there's mold lines going across here, and there's a number of different mold lines around the kit that I'll have to get rid of. That's kind of just part of the next step. Once the modifications are done, then I'm just going over and just like sanding things, and that's when I'll get rid of all the mold lines and everything. Now that brings us to the weapon, which I am going to be using a part of the lance, but actually for my weapon swap, I'm going to be using the beam rifle from the Moon Gundam. I'm going to be modifying this into a sniper rifle. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is basically using the handle of this lance as our very long barrel, so that's going to be stuck out the end of there like that. And going to be using some other leftover parts, like these are just leftover parts here, and going to be cutting off this part here on the top, and this is going to be our new camera sight here. We'll be using that like so, and another little part here for the end of that. Another challenge is just making the hand fit onto here, because as it is, this hand does not fit onto this handle. Number one, it doesn't have a trigger finger hand, but other than that, I mean, trigger finger aside, it just doesn't fit on there. Now if we take a close look at the inside of the hand here, you can see there's these two little guys right there that I'm thinking probably if I just go ahead and just slice those off, that should give us the space that we need to fit onto the handle. Let's just go ahead and try that. Let's see if that did the trick. And yep, then the handle fits into the hand, no problem. But But now our trick is that it doesn't have a trigger finger to go into there. So what I'm going to do then is actually cut out a little bit of that, and we'll just kind of trick the eye a little bit by just cutting out this section a little bit so that that hand can at least fit up here, so it looks like it's in the area of the trigger finger, where the trigger finger should go there, but it's not actually in there. This, again, is a job better off done with a saw rather than very haphazardly done with a knife. But you use the tools that you got, and I, at the moment, don't have all my tools here, so once we cut a little bit out of the front there, and I also cut a little bit out the back just to make sure that we get this as high as we possibly can. That's how high it's going to sit up on the handle, which is pretty good, close enough. That works well enough for me, that's convincing enough, and then the back of the hand still fits on there just fine like that. So that'll be our weapon holding hand. That's sorted. Now, getting this part to fit on the top of here like that is basically just a matter of getting rid of this little kind of detail right there at the end, and just getting rid of this part here at the top, and then basically just gluing it right down onto there. And this piece, which is just a little thruster bell detail, leftover part, again, will just go right up into there. So we're just kind of gluing stuff together to make it look like it's more part of the weapon here like that, and that'll look like the camera there like that. And obviously haven't gotten rid of any of the nub marks on a lot of this stuff, so it's just kind of all just to get us where we need to go, and then we'll work on cleaning everything up. As we can see, it's going to be a pretty close fit there, so I think that's going to be perfectly convincing enough. This piece, I think I have this piece in backwards, but that's how I want it, and as it is, it needs to be like a little bit more straight, but it's kind of blocked here, so I'll have to cut that inside a bit out a little bit so that this can extend up just a little bit more so that it sits straight, and I'll have to grind down this a little bit there on the bottom. But I think that's going to fit on there really well. So I got that basically all sorted out now, so that will fit right onto the top of there, and I'll go ahead and glue that here shortly, but that will glue onto the top of there like that, with that bit out the back and this looking just like so. Anyway, the problem that we're going to have now is getting this long handle piece to be our barrel. Now what normally I would do would just use a brass rod, like a 1mm brass rod, drill a hole into the end of that, drill a hole into this, and then just use the rod to stick it onto there like that. But not having a brass rod on hand here, I'm going to have to sort out a little bit different way about this. So basically what I want to try to do is just cut the end of this down a little bit so that I can just basically glue it into this, so that when I sandwich these two halves of the rifle together, this little bit of the end of the barrel here will be sandwiched in between there, and just hopefully there'll be enough glue in there, and I'll be careful with that it will not snap this off, as this is quite long. And then the end of the barrel here, I will go ahead and just cut off this little guy here right at the very end of there. Let's go ahead and mark the center of that with my knife, and we can drill out just the barrel hole at the end of here while we're here. Alright, so after some careful cutting to make the end of that barrel basically into like a square, and then cutting this down into just like a square piece, I got that so that will slot into there, and as is, I mean, it's a little bit loose, so I'm just going to go ahead and glue that, and that should be a strong enough connection for that to act as our new rifle barrel. Alright guys, so I still have a little bit of cleaning up work to do on this just to get it ready for painting, so we'll probably end the episode here for now. In the next part we'll talk more about the actual painting of it, but for now this is basically the look that I'm going to be going for, and I think what I'm going to do is also go in and just glue some of the joints now that I'm pretty much decided on how it's going to look, and I'm pretty much decided on this particular pose for it. I want to just go ahead and make a fixed pose, so I'm going to just go ahead and glue a lot of the joints in place like this. So we'll continue on in the next episode, but let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you think about this so far? I mean, we really haven't changed all that much, but just some small modifications really, basically. But I mean, that's kind of the name of the game with this particular contest, and just following the theme of the contest. So the bigger changes, much more noticeable changes will come in the next episode once we get into the painting. But yep, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Thanks for checking out the video today. If you are looking for some of the HG kits from the Battle Log line, or just whatever you guys might be looking for, of course, the link to USA Gundam store will be down in the video description below. You can check that out, and you can use my coupon code there as well. That'll save you 10% off everything on the site, so go ahead and check that out. That's gonna be it for today, guys. Thank you for watching, subscribing, liking. It's all greatly appreciated. Until next time, I'll see y'all later. Bye bye.